I could get a bigger podium.
Get those clippings.
Right. Don't you guys got your own stand that you can just kind of put my, where do I put my stuff? Now, don't try and say if I break it, I pay for it, you know. Move some things back here. Good morning. First, I'd like to thank Mayor Johnson and Director Hamilton for being here with us today. As Chief of Milwaukee Police Department, I'm committed to transparency with the public that we serve. Today, I'm here to share with you our year-end 2022 data on crime in the city. I'm pleased to report, overall, violent crime within the city is down 7%. Again, overall violent crime in our city is down 7%. Now, I do acknowledge that within that number, we must include the homicide numbers, which is, unfortunate, 11% increase. I want to understand that while homicides as a challenge, the primary factor within this is unknown, what we do know is that conflict, argument, and domestic violence is contributing to that increase. In fact, we believe there's almost approximately half of those numbers of incidents for conflict, argument, and domestic violence that's contributing to this increase of homicides. I am pleased to note that for the homicide clearance rate, it has been increased to 57% in 2022 compared to 51% in 2021. Fatal crashes increased 14%. However, there is an increase, there's an overall 13% decrease in crashes. While the reality of violence that occurs in our city, I am here to share some good news as well in regards to these overall numbers. Part 1 crime is down 15%. And if you recall, when we had our first report out, we were around, I believe, 8 to 11%. But now we're down 15%. Robbery is down 14%, and auto theft or motor vehicle theft is down 23%. The data I'm sharing with you today represents only a snapshot. We understand the priorities and the importance of addressing reckless driving, human trafficking, and other top priorities within our community. With that said, a priority that the Milwaukee Police Department is committed to is working on a strategic violent crime plan to share with our public that provides information that the many ways MPD addresses crime mitigation in our city. Although we've seen decreases in several types of crimes in 2022, we must continue to work together with our community and system partners to continue to decrease crime within the city. The Milwaukee Police Department works hard every day to keep this community safe and will continue to do so. But we ask that every member of this community prioritize public safety and be partners in deterring crime. We've seen an increase of guns being stolen from vehicles. This gives greater accessibility to individuals that may not be allowed to possess a firearm. If you legally carry a firearm, lock your vehicles and keep your firearms secured. Park in well-lit areas. Be aware of your surroundings. Doing your part to make crime difficult can reduce criminal activity. Criminals look for opportunities. We're hopeful that Part 1 crime will continue on a downward trajectory in 2023, and we know what we will work best when we work together to keep this community safe. Now we'll bring the Mayor Johnson to the podium.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief. And to be clear, there are some very positive trends that emerged in 2022, but I'm not here to celebrate. Police use data like this, data like Chief Norman just discussed, to help to set strategy. When we see auto theft numbers declining dramatically, it reinforces the approaches that the police have put into place. The same is true of robbery as well as burglary. We want to build on those trends that you see here in the numbers that are being presented. The homicide numbers are not a surprise to those of us who have continually paid attention to this issue over the course of the last year. In a moment, Office of Violence Prevention Director Ashanti Hamilton will talk about some of the work of his office to address all violence, particularly gun violence. I do want to make one important point here, and that's that we're not simply reacting to homicides in Milwaukee. In addition to enforcement and intervention, we're also working on long-term strategies to address the situation in the city as well. So in that, I want to work to make sure that we reach young people earlier on in their lives, earlier intervention in the lives of kids, young people in the city of Milwaukee, before they're tempted to go out and get into trouble. We're working to offer guidance and positive reinforcement for those young people in Milwaukee. I want stricter laws both on the state as well as the federal level as it relates to keeping guns out of the hands of people who should not have them in the first place, right? That's important, right? And we've got our Office of Violence Prevention, we've got our police department, but all things related to guns are not within the purview of the city of Milwaukee. There are other partners at other levels of government, and they've got responsibility to help in this matter too. And that includes passing laws and helping to implement new strategies that don't allow people who should not have access to guns in the first place. And we're working to increase stable housing and good jobs in Milwaukee as a long-term strategy to reduce violence in the city as well. These are assets that build stronger families and in turn build stronger neighborhoods and in turn build a stronger city for all of us. There are no simple solutions to reduce crime. Every one of us standing here knows that. So yes, the police are important, and I'm working with them to get the financial resources that they need to maintain a police department that gets the job done and does great work in our community. Yes, community outreach from our Office of Violence Prevention is important as well. It's extremely important. And yes, long-term strategies are moving forward so that in the coming years the city will be significantly safer for everybody, for kids, for families, for folks all across our great city. And as you've heard me say this before, everyone's got to be engaged in making Milwaukee safer. Everybody's got to be in the game. There's no room on the sideline for folks. Everybody's got to be a part of the solution, and everybody can contribute. And that means teachers, preachers, friends, parents, neighbors, mentors. Everybody's got a role to play. So with that, I'm going to ask Director Ashanti Hamilton from the Office of Violence Prevention to come to the mic. Thank you.
So thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief. So before I begin with my comments, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the victims of violence and homicide in the city of Milwaukee, just to remind everybody that as important as it is to talk about the statistics and to have this be data driven, that it is not lost on us that we're talking about people, and we're talking about the lives of our family members and neighbors. So we want to begin with that acknowledgement. And then I want to just acknowledge the fact that the challenges that we're experiencing here in the city of Milwaukee are not unique to us as a big city, and that there are national trends over the course of the past few years of homicides going up 30% nationally. And the effects of this national uptick has been national conversations about three major things affecting this. And Milwaukee is not unique in having to deal with this as well. One being, we all know that we went through a pandemic, and that many communities that were struggling before the pandemic, those challenges were exacerbated during the pandemic. And Milwaukee is no different in the way that it has affected us. People living in more close proximity, economic pressures, structures and support systems that typically they relied on dissolved. And we still haven't seen a rebound in those effects. We had national protests. We had a recognition and an awareness of injustices across the country, and the lack of change and the slow change that people were frustrated with, the inability to be able to feel like justice was coming to their communities. And the chief and the mayor mentioned the easy access of firearms and the use of firearms in interpersonal disagreements and conflicts. So what's being done? And what have we seen work and not work in other cities across the country? One of those strategies that's worked in many cities that have seen a slower uptick and in some cases positive numbers in the area of homicide is being able to identify hotspots and have a strategic way of interrupting those violent situations in those hotspots. We call them violence interrupters, credible messengers. We have a 414 Life team as well as a team of credible messengers that have been operating in the most challenged neighborhoods in the city of Milwaukee with those teams. Some of those teams have seen some incredible impacts. Connections with juvenile offenders, relationships with families that have been struggling before and through the pandemic, and building positive relationships with them, and even being able to follow a lot of the incidents that we're seeing on social media, and building relationships to deter retaliation in many of those situations. And they've been able to do it across the city with small numbers. There's been particular attention being paid to the mental health of our community. And we've been building relationships with culturally led organizations who have relationships in many of the communities that we're operating in, building credible relationships with them so that people who traditionally may not have gotten therapy, counseling, and support through conflict resolution training are actually willing to take this training in many of these neighborhoods now. And we want to be able to build an infrastructure so that anyone that is willing to take this type of training, that there's an infrastructure to help them connect with these clinicians. And we're making a huge effort to have a coordinated collective impact in the city of Milwaukee. You may have noticed that we have worked with city departments that have not typically seen violence prevention as a goal of theirs, come to the table, agree to partner with both the police department, the Office of Violence Prevention, and other organizations that are out there in the community doing this work, to actually make their mission to be violence prevention partners and coordinators. We're working with other levels of government, other municipalities, so that we're not duplicating services. We are magnifying the work of our partners through the work of other municipalities. And then we're building a platform for all community-based organizations and residents to understand the resources that's available to them and a role that they can play in order to help the city of Milwaukee achieve the goals that we want to achieve and create the quality of life in the city of Milwaukee that all of our residents deserve. And so with this effort, I think it's extremely important for us to recognize the work of so many people that have dedicated their lives to improving the quality of life in the city of Milwaukee. And I want to thank the leadership of the mayor and the police chief to recognize that we're not going to abandon the strategy of fighting for justice and fairness for communities, and recognizing that we have to take a trauma-informed approach to helping people in communities heal. And by doing that, we can connect them with the proper services and reduce the level of crime in our city. And so that's our commitment, and we want to continue to work in this direction. Chief.
Thank you, Director Hamilton. At this time, we can open up for any particular questions.
We're going to start on the left over there, Courtney.
So I want to talk about the clearance rate for homicides last year. What are the challenges to clear the rest of them? You have nearly half cleared. Is it the sheer volume of them?
So it's a combination of different factors. One, we do have a capacity issue. Seeing that we are ending the year with 214 compared to our prior year shows the increase. We do have issues in regards to our, attrition. That is always a concern of making sure that we have the appropriate resources to address the issue from a policing standpoint. But we're very proud of our partnerships. I know that you have to be a force multiplier, working with our many and various partners, as Director Hamilton talked about, in regards to how do we address that trust building. We all know that the police department is only as good as the information they get. And if you don't have the trust of your community, there's a difficult lift to clear cases and to get to the bottom of things. We've seen that our incidents are deadlier. Homicides include more than just firearms. It could be knives, it could be any other utensil, but we're seeing, unfortunately, that firearms is a leading factor in our homicides. And so that is why there's such an important issue to address as a whole, not just the police department, but as a community, media, the partners, the community partners, the business partners. There's always and there is a role for everyone to play and be able to help change that trajectory and the challenges that we're seeing in our city.
But do you consider cleared when they're in custody, or what is cleared at that point?
It's clear when we do have someone in custody.
Christina?
Has this been a trend, seeing a decrease in overall crime? And if not a trend, when's the last year we saw some positive decreases in these numbers, besides homicides, of course?
So we are seeing across the country trends of decrease in crime, especially the anomaly is 2020. I mean, it really just threw everything out of whack in regards to what, as a nation, as a world, that we experienced. I would say that pre-pandemic numbers was a definite reduction in regards to the incidents that we're seeing, and that was a trend. But, and I get challenged when people say, well, let me, say that you're not at pre-pandemic numbers. I challenge that we have pre-pandemic numbers in anything. Whether you want to talk about chain supply, whether you want to talk about in regards to, the challenges within our educational system. The police department actually follows along other trends in regards to what we're seeing across our nation. So I will say that they're still intermittent. We just heard in regards from Director Hamilton in regards to that we just still seeing an increase in homicides across this nation. But there is hope. The relationships that we're building, whether it was the Office of Violence Prevention, whether it's our elected officials, starting with the mayor's office, whether it's with our community-based organizations, whether it's within the business community, I am reassured that we are in the right space in regards to working together to understand this is a collective issue to be able to address it moving forward.
Julia?
Thank you for providing the percentages. My main focus today, as far as I'm concerned, with the station and what I've been assigned to, is just focusing on the homicide numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about those numbers a little bit more, especially the ones that are still unsolved?
Mm-hmm.
And it is interesting that you did mention that you're losing really, skilled, veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And the Milwaukee Police Association was hoping that the number of police on the streets would increase.
Mm-hmm.
Do you hope to have more police officers on the streets and work with other offices to get that done?
Mm-hmm. Gave you a lot of questions there, but okay, I'll start. The large majority of our homicides are known. We had 73 last year, which begs the question of why. Again, working with our community partners, working for our own engagement, because as you know, that's my vision, that's my mission, to engage our community in a positive manner, because we are information driven. That is a challenge to make sure that there's platforms, opportunities to build relationships so that we can have better engagement with our community. If you don't trust your police department, if you don't trust those who are, again, formally required and empowered to bring those to justice, we have a huge obstacle or hurdle to overcome. So that is a continuous work in regards to the Milwaukee Police Department. What we're seeing in regards to the ones that we do know, just as I mentioned earlier, is that we do have a issue of how do we resolve our conflict within this city? And it's almost like the conflict argument in DV, domestic violence, is tied in together. And as Director Hamilton talked about, and we have mentioned in regards to utilizing all resources, the culturally sensitive organizations who deal with our domestic violence, dealing with our regular partners, Sojourner Family Peace Center, but also having opportunities that we can empower our community to be part of the solution? Are you finding mediation or conflict resolution opportunities, training? Do we engage our faith base? These issues are a collective issue. It's not just any one particular organization. And what we're doing, especially in regards to these report out, the transparency that coming under the mayor's office and this department, is showing where the lifts are. I mean, this is platforms that's on our websites. You see, mapping, we share data with the Milwaukee Homicide Review Commission, with a lot of different partners out there to help educate the public in regards to what are we seeing, the hot spots that Director Hamilton talked about, and how we can be part of the solution. And I always say, and I always end, that together we're better. But I do want to acknowledge that this is not something to be proud of in regards to that. We have these numbers trending in the right direction because, again, this is still one too many. Just as I echo the words of, Director Hamilton of saying that, we need to acknowledge that we do have people out there hurting, and I'm glad that there's a collective response from the city and also our partners that we are, addressing these issues together. And I will say that there's no particular viable reason not to get engaged. Where there's Crime Stoppers, where there's the ability to be anonymous, where there's P3 tips, or other platforms of working through the community-based partners. There's the opportunity to get involved, find your space, find what talks and speaks to you. But I don't want to hear anyone being bystanders to this particular problem, because that's not helping the resolve the issue, is contributing to the issue.
Elliot?
This is a question for anyone who thinks they might have a good answer. So there was a study that came out midway through last year from the Council on Criminal Justice. It looked at 29 cities across the city. It found that homicides were leveling off, if not decreasing, but other types of crimes like property crimes were increasing. It seems like Milwaukee is kind of the opposite of that. I mean, if you had any insight as to why that might be the case.
Anybody want to take this? I guess it's going to be me then. You said all three